And so today I'm happy to present you Imke Plinta, that comes from a graphic design background and also had chance to work in different fields with different people, like from consultancy and also academic work. So I won't say too much, and I won't let you present us some projects. I'll let you enjoy.
Thank you, Charlotte. So I'm Imke. I'm working, I was diplomated in '99 in graphic design, and since then I'm working much more in the space and in like signage systems. I worked a lot in France, I worked in Switzerland, I'm teaching. In 2010 I decided, after 12 years of professional working in branding and signage system and classical surroundings of the design job, I decided to make a master's in Zurich, and I integrated the institute which Design to Context, which was founded by Ruedi Baur, which is a quite known designer here in Paris. He's based here in Paris, but he's a French-Swiss designer, and he founded this institute, Design to Context, to ask exactly about the context. We heard about the context, and this is what interests me, to work with people and in context. Because for me, there's a lot of methodology we can use or things like that, but maybe it's not much this one methodology or this one way to say design thinking is done like this, like this, like this. And also the human-centered design, I use all these tools, but we have always to play with these tools because it depends on the context, on the people we are working with. And that's the most important thing, to remain flexible and to see also that we don't know everything. Every day it will change something. Every day is happening something. And so we have to deal with that, and we have to be very flexible to work with that. And so I come back to the design comme outil de transformation et de dialogue, as tool for transformation and dialogue. And this was a project we were invited with Civic City, which is still an association which exists here in France, always directed by Ruedi Baur. And Civic City is looking for what can we do in more civic in the space which is surrounding us. So how can inhabitants deal with things that they have as problematic because they are living in a cité, for example, a social housing district in some urban context. And so I wanted to come back to this too, because for me the design and humanitarian design starts in our proximity, and it's not only the humanitarian sector we are talking about, but that was why I choose also to show you quickly the Marseille Project, which was, we were invited as Association Civic City to the Marseille Capitale Culturelle 2013 in Marseille. We were a huge team, like students from our post-diploma program Civic Design, which was done by the Haute École d'Art et Design of Geneva, and we had multidisciplinary student groups, which were all already in the professional sector. And we are working on this social housing district in Marseille, in the north quarters of Marseille, where everybody's saying, wow, this very, very dangerous surroundings, and there's the dealing, there's shooting, and everything is happening there. And then they built up in the European cultural capital this idea of making 5 creative quarters, and we were one of them. And everybody who was invited as an artist or as a group had to deal within this quarter. And so some projects didn't ever happen because the inhabitants or the social housing districts and the approach of the designers who came there or of the artists who came there were more or less difficult. So this project was going on for 2.5 years. We were within the sector in the Cité des Arts de la Rue, so this is a district, it's nearly a quarter into a quarter, an olive oil factory, and there's the Cité des Arts de la Rue, which means the street theater, and then there are facilities to make woodworks, there are facilities to make steelworks and stuff like that. It's quite like its own cité in a cité, so means like it's enclosed. So you have to go inside, and outside there are the buildings of the quarter. We were always going there with the people from there, which already did a good big network of Hôtel du Nord, which means there's a big hotel in Marseille, and you can find it now of Hôtel du Nord. Maybe after we can then go quicker, because it's important for the context. So the inhabitants of the North Quarters proposed housing or a guest house system for people who come from the cultural capital. And so they opened their houses and they built up the Hôtel du Nord network, which is providing like hotel rooms, but it's like guest rooms, but they're also responsible to tell to the people who they host to make understand the context where they're living, what is the story of the place, etc. So to break down the boundary in between people who have maybe thoughts about the north part of the city, things like, oh, it's dangerous, but also it's very beautiful, and it's not dangerous at all, because there are always people like you and me coexisting together and giving hospitality to somebody. So this was an important, and so we had this local approach of people that were making walks, which is ongoing in Marseille, and so we could explore the whole quarter with the people who were involved in the development of the project. Because this is important, because we are not coming to a refugee camp, we are coming into a normal housing, social housing, and we were also dealing with the local authorities, so the local governance, the city governance, and all of that. So as you could see in one of the slides, you saw all the partners, so it was a quite difficult project, because we had to deal as well with the urban development as well as with the needs what the inhabitants had. And first of all came, of course, the city, what do we want to do, and the politicians, we want to do this and this, and we were there and saying, okay, how can we find out what are the real needs on a local place? And so we had this first walk and 3-day seminar, and then everybody go back to his own house in Switzerland, in Mexico, in Germany, in France, and some of them were, of course, from Marseille, and they mapped the territory. They were talking about what they could find out about the meetings with the inhabitants, what they said. We had contact. We were in the social center of La Vista, which was a social housing district we had, and we could find out where problematics is that there was a big highway who was constructed after the war, and then they had loosened the connections in between the quarters. So there was something about, we are up there is a fence, and we cannot go down there. So there is a fence, but there are always people going over the fence and doing pathways, informal. And so we were working on this informal use of the quarter, and to point out how can we make this visible and feasible, and how can we make understand the cities itself, what they should do. So we had this, you have on this part, you have La Vista and you have the Galad, and what they really wanted, the inhabitants want to have this reconnection of that, where here is the highway and the city center of Marseille is up there. Here's the sea, everywhere is the sea. So they wanted to have this connection, which was a really human connection, because it was a walking connection. Nothing else, it's just a walking connection. Because if you take from La Vista, if you have to go down to the school, you have to take a road, and you have a long way. But if you go down directly on the top of the cemetery, you are there in 5 minutes. So we pointed out which urban environments over there. So what is the Cité des Arts de la Rue? This is where we were working. This is the old fabrics. Then you have this going down. So we found out the informal ways and we mapped it. And this was already one of the tools which was very important to use, to have it visible for the people that we were dealing with and talking with, that they saw themselves walking and seeing what they're doing and having it like on a plan. Because this is the first thing that sometimes is missing in a work as a designer with the people, they are not able probably to visualize it in a simple way sometimes. And then we found out where are the most visible places, where are things that we can point out, what we can highlight in the use, or also for the heritages, the history of the place and stuff like that, because it makes all a city. So if they are building a museum of Mediterranean culture, the Mediterranean culture is already on the hill, because in the cité there are Algerians, there are Tunisians, there are a lot of people from everywhere. The whole Mediterranean culture is together here, and also together on the cemetery, because they have a cemetery which includes Muslim part, and you can see already on the graves a mixture of culture, and to point really out this richness of diversity, which is a very, very positive aspect. But for the people that when you live there, you're living it like this on an everyday basis, but you are not aware about the richness that can be done. And then we pointed out where could we intervene, what could be the interesting points. So we had two phases. We had 2012 during the Journée de Patrimoine, like today. We had the first rendu, which means the first big presentation, and we had to make prototype for this, because this was a prototype as tool for dialogue and transformation. So we pointed out this part, and so we started to have this belvedere, which could be showing the direction to have the connection to the city, but also to go down. And then there was, of course, a lack of money, and we could see when we were talking about this, and always in consultation with the inhabitants, we could build the first part, and the second part we could just give a preview, but we built it then. These were the models we were doing, like during the workshops, and like very simple stuff to make understand what it can be. Then the position, and then the technical drawings, of course, because then once the inhabitants were okay with the idea to make this belvedere, they said, okay, you are the designers, you have to do it, because we are not capable to do it. So do it, and we did it. So we made the whole sketches, and we included on the top of the belvedere a card of the vision of the quarter for the inhabitants, what they were like finding out in conversation with them, what they dream of a future of the quarter, to have the highway which becomes a boulevard. So in French it's directly something else. A boulevard is not anymore used as a highway, but it's a boulevard, so everything is slowed down, and you have these ideas of something more paradisiac, and also to point out the cascade, which is not connected every day and everyday use, because it's behind a fabrication site, and to really work the quality of the quarter. This is the mapping we did for the Boulevard du Soleil. It's Highway of the Soleil, Autoroute du Soleil. And also to say to them what is where and how. So this was all totally drawn by hand, and this was a construction of it, and full Mistral with very high winds, and the 2 days we had to build it up. And then there was an interesting part that the city was saying, okay, now before we open it up for the Journée de Patrimoine and the visitors are coming, we should put some security guys there, because as in the other cities, they were burning down ideas that the artists would propose. They were saying, oh, maybe something will happen with the thing you are doing, and we said no. If they want to, it was decided with the inhabitants, so we have to take the risk to leave it like it is, and we will see what happens. And if they burn it down, then we failed. I mean, it's very simple. So we left it like this, of course, with an end. That's what was happening. So the people were coming. This was the prefiguration of the steps on the other side. We had this folder and this flyer for communication to say, now you can go and see. And the people were really coming and making pictures instead of burning it down, because it was their thing. So the gangs they were most afraid of were happy to have it, and even if it was just for 4 days. And so we came also there with politicians, and they said, okay, we understood the thing, you had working on the urban plans, and we will do something, we will give you money. But then came election, and they didn't do it. we were also walking on the side of the where the informal pathway was, and we were using it anymore. And then we came into the second year of the project, and we decided we will focus more on the pathway itself, because maybe we can do it in a better way. And we will use it like the principle of an opera, which means when you build a dome, you have the construction site directly in place, like your mobile laboratory. So we try to make more workshops and be more in the place in this year, because I found out after the first year of the work with the people that it was kind of strange to make this just coming there for 3 days, for 2 weeks or something like that. And I said, no, I have to move to Marseille. So I moved to Marseille, and because I had every week I went to La Viste, I saw the people there, and I was talking to the people and working with them. And so we were saying, okay, the second part will be le cimetière de toutes les cultures du monde, so the cemetery and the way above the cemetery. And again, it was on an existing urban planning, what they wanted to make an extension of the cemetery, and we were working directly on the plans of the Marseille renovation. And so we were always dealing with in between political issues and the inhabitants' issues. So again, it was the same principle. We went there, and then we were staying there. We were living in the cité for a while. Like this, we had to find some tricks to be there, because you cannot stay there in social housing and just rent for a while. That's not possible. So we had to invent a system to get there and to do it in a formal way, and we did it. And I was there with the students for like 3 weeks, directly on the place, and then we came back, and then I had my flat, and the students were in my flat, and everywhere in the Hotel du Nord who were opening their houses to them. So we were really much more on the place, and so there you can see a little bit of the cemetery and the different issues that are different cultures, different religions, that all what we can develop. And then you have the pathway. This is the official plan of the city, and we said, okay, this pathway will go included be like this. And then we had some also utopian plans that we were presenting to give more input for the city urbanization, that they should close the highway with some green. Then we wanted to conserve a part of a cité which should have been thrown down. And we said, okay, this could be the Créneau des Artisans, because in the city over there are the local experts, people that are specialists in this and this and this. The expertise are not used. We should give them and open it up for everybody over there. But in the end, they shut down the building. They destroyed it. Go on. And then we said, okay, we will make the enceinte, which means the border of the pathway, with these plugs to construct it. Then you see we did all the consultation reunions around the table of the Belvedere, because they have it now in the social center. Go. And then we had this workshop about making bricks, so making the wall by itself, and to have it as porous wall where plants can pass through, and it can be done by 2 people because you can carry it. And there were the president of the social center. She was a woman, Italian origins, and she was daughter of a mason, of somebody who makes bricks, so she could provide us with more technical input, because even the ateliers over there never worked with cement and beton. And we had to include the stories of the quarter, so we were trying to make a tool to write on the wall. Again, always in consultation with them. Then we were also trying out another principle with Giulio Vinaccia of using and reusing all the garbage which is going in the interstice, what means the informal place that is not anymore their place. So they're not taking care about it, but if they take care about it, then it can be a quality place, because it's just behind the house. But it's kind of also the idea about what is formal, what is informal, and what we are taking care of or not. The guys from the Cité were helping and always building up the prototypes with us together, of course. And they were taking care of the whole signage for the Journée du Patrimoine, because it was unfortunately the bad thing about the project was it was always made as a prototype, so it could not remain there because you need the technical allowance and all the security stuff. And they were talking with the témoignage ils font, so they are talking about what they are really thinking, and that was why it was so well received. So this was the most important actors of which wanted to pose inside of this tiny prototype. And then we have the other one you can see in the back, which is the wall coming down the pathway to go down in the valley. And this is Giulio Vinaccia, who is an Italian designer who works since 30 years for humanitarian design in his way, like in emergency situations for UNICEF or for UNIDO or for UN. And after these projects, he invited me and he proposed me a job within UNIDO, where I will come now to, which is a United Nations Industrial Development. And he told me, yeah, we have a project in the Mediterranean area and we are working with craftsmen and we are trying to create resilience in the places. So also to provide a chance to be active in the places where the crises are, to have an alternative for the people, not to need to go away where it's possible. So this was the whole thing about it. So we have some pictures from the prototypes. We had an add-on. We constructed also a mobile table that can extract and can be done plié dans cette petite remorque. On peut tout mettre dedans, tout plier, tout, et en fait on peut aller où on veut pour raconter ce projet. Et ça, en fait, c'était très très utilisé. It was much used because you could deplace and you could make discussions around it, and this was also a very important part of the project. And now we need the film. So UNIDO, I said United Nations Industrial Development, and Julio asked me to take this job. He told me, okay, what you need to do is to go there and to try to make the link in between a design process and the local craft people, and how we can do something on product development in the different places. So I had different clusters. I was responsible for Algeria and for Palestine. In Algeria, we worked with crafts, so the guys who are doing copperware, and then with Batna, with the jewelry cluster. So I was one of the women who were doing this job. I had just men around me, from 35 to 70 craftsmen, and it was really very, very interesting because we are working not only on I had to see the products, I had to see how the people work, what's the commercial chamber doing, what is the politics doing. We had there were a cluster research before, which was done by a very professional organization from Barcelona, who was saying, okay, these clusters could be interesting, which was not the case for if a designer would have looked at the things first and would have chosen by the idea of which cluster could be interesting in terms of gender and inclusion, which is very important in Muslim countries. So I'm making a critique right now. They were just looking on numbers. We had to deal with that as designers. We just had, okay, you have now the copper cluster and you have now the jewelry cluster. And the jewelry cluster had a lot of illegal stuff because there were things going on underneath the table we could not probably always deal with, but it was very interesting. I will just show you the teaser about the whole sector, because the project was going on from Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt, Palestine and Jordan. Yeah, I have all. And this was a teaser we did for the whole project. Biggest challenge for Giulio and I and the other designers who are sometimes asked to join these projects are to try to get into the whole project process in the term of being there from the beginning on, because if it's all done by project managers and stuff like that, we have some lacks of material research. When we're talking about markets or stuff like that, or we're doing the first reports, I'm right now talking about my actual project. I'm working for a fashion collection in Gaza. And so I'm back in Palestine, but not, unfortunately, only virtual. And the thing is that we have a lot of ideas, but we have to make it happen. So what can we do? And how can we reinforce the idea of resilience, of sustainability, if we're talking about a sustainable project? So we are not talking just about energy aspect or something like that, but what we have to deal with. I can make a fancy fashion collection, I'm not, but Misa can. You saw him, he is fashion designer. He can make a fancy collection, but with what? Where is the material coming from? If they have to import, how do they deal with the closed cross borders? How can we make it more sustainable? So I'm there also to point out, we have to have a local production of raw material. We have to use that stocks that are there, or we have to use reused materials, and including this idea with the local people there. Then the other thing we are dealing with is gender differences, of course, because in Gaza it's very traditional. So there are in the textile sector, where in other countries more women employed, in Gaza there are maybe 5 women employed within a sector, which was a huge sector some years ago. So what we are trying to do is to find out how we can deal with these issues in a smart way, to include already existing tiny brands that are existing in Gaza, of course, and which are mostly women who are leading this. How can we include them to make a new market line, and how can we go further with that in an industrial development process? So we are not really talking about economy and giving them an opportunity to build up more labor and more inclusion. For me, all our jobs as designers in this sector is very difficult, because we can, of course, go like you are doing on site and do the tiny little thing. We are within working for UNIDO. I have to deal with reports. I have to deal with non-political discourse. It has to be apolitical. I cannot include a feminist statement. I can just trying to insert this idea in a smart way. So to have like some statement that could be, for example, a hybrid collection that can be wear by a man as by a woman. This is also a statement, but this is the things that we will be doing with the people itself within the training. So I am mostly developing trainings of creative development and the creative process with in-between craftsmen, workers and leaders of the workshops. And the other thing I did, and what you will see right now, is based on these product development projects in Madagascar, for example. We had also this clustering and empowerment of women in the bush, where they are there with children. They have no income. The artisans, the crafts are very developed in Madagascar, and they can do nearly everything from nothing. It's impressive how they are creative, because they have to deal with it, because they are not only like an underdeveloped country, but they are an island, and sometimes it's a bit like it's closed. So, or people are coming and taking over, and the government is corrupt, and it's really a lot of political issues. But the people are just amazing. It's a mixture of, I don't know, I never saw people like this, because they're just beautiful, because they have so many influences, and it's like a cultural meltdown, because everything is existing there with nothing. And so they had this project with Giulio, making furniture and some stuff, and it generated, because we are starting with a very low budget always with these projects. We have an envelope with very, very low budget. So he generated with this low budget a much bigger budget, and he said, we need the design training over there, and we need that the people do not have to come from somewhere, but do it by themselves, but with a little bit more skills. And these skills will include design process, design thinking, human-centered behavior, anthropology, so really the link to the traditions, the link to the history, and being smart to do the business model canvas, to have a whole project with which will work in a circular way. And so we built up there a Master of Design and Innovation. This is Giulio with the guys who did the furniture. No, he's not even there, it's not a problem. And we had so I leaded the whole implementation of the Master Design and Innovation Madagascar, and I had to do the training of the trainers. So I had these people there, the professors of a marketing and communication school, and I had to train them. I cannot train somebody who's 20 years older than me because he knows more than me, but he has not the same view. So we trained each other. Let's say it like this. We built up together the program, which was already rewritten. This is Hans. Hans had the chance to, he's now 70. He is always on his motorbike, driving through whole Madagascar to try to get the craftsmen to make some design and new products. And he was very happy that we had this first Master of Design and Innovation with 10 students who could do it during 2 years. And so what we provided was making a link to the private sector, who, like the private sector means, for example, a chocolate fabric who needed something. This was the development of the products in the beginning, where I was not there. These are some of the products who generated the money that we could do the master, and a Fab Lab, of course, so it's always a makerspace included. He could expose the whole products. It's a pity I did not put the big image with portraits of the artisan people in these huge windows, which is a Palais de la Reine, or it's a palace of the queen, the last queen of Madagascar. And they didn't want the portraits because they were too ethnic. But there's no ethnic existing in Madagascar. They're just tribes. So already the discourse is quite strange, though. And so we started this 2 years program, and we had some architects and designers coming, working on these different issues that the private sector had. So making brand identity, making product development. So we had all these different people coming there and working with the students and giving all what they could give from the different sectors we were working with and we are dealing with. And the students were developing really interesting projects. And after the 2 years, they were working, of course, on their diploma projects. This, for example, also educative. This was the chocolate project where we were talking about how the cacao is really brought there like this because the infrastructure is so bad that they cannot bring it in another way. So one part of the way is coming by the things. So it's also a factor to tell this story about it, to have more quality and to tell really where the things are coming from. This is a project about caca de chauve-souris. Donc, I don't know if it's something that's good for the soil, and this is always going together with an educational program with children. So this was directly developed with schools. Then the city were thinking about a market and how we could make a better quality to the market in the city. And so we were going in the urban dimension, and there we did a whole research about how could Antananarivo become a more livable city, like it's polluted and stuff like that. And this we presented also in Paris in the Centre Pompidou within a research we did. Well, also we were joining Ruedi on Civic City. So there we went with some guys of the students to Paris to present it with other schools from everywhere. We were together with a Polish school, but there were like 13 universities included in this research. You see, like you have just an overview of different kind of industries we were working with. These are the diploma projects which were then presented in 2018. So one was working on storytelling about Malgache stories which are not illustrated. There were just one illustration, so she was illustrating it in a very special way, but she was going in a very clean way. So it could be everywhere. It could be not Madagascar. So this was one of the challenges also to, when you use design tools, how do you use them and to preserve also the heritage and the culture and the cultural influence. If you're talking about Madagascar, you should see where it's coming from. When it's in the south, you have some kind of things you do with your hair, which will you do in a different way in the north, for example. And every project included always a sustainable character. We can stop here if you want.
Yeah. I think it's a really good overview of all your thematic of approaching the design and putting it into action, and also it makes the link of what we've seen yesterday, that we talk about the education. And that's a really good overview, and by showing the video making all together, it's going to make a link quite obvious. So thank you very much for your intervention. And yeah, if there is any questions,
but also after.
I'm always asking questions. You were mentioning that you already had logistical difficulties getting the resources you needed to produce or to conduct those projects. Mm-hmm. Now I was working on similar projects also with cacao farmers in a different context. Mm-hmm. And I was also thinking about setting up something similar in Myanmar now over my university to contribute economically to the political movement that's going on there. Mm-hmm. And the challenges we faced were not even getting the stuff there, but rather political regulations on getting the stuff out, especially if it's about food towards the European market. So my question was how are you approaching this? Are you then just going through this difficult process? Is the project so far maybe even not, and it's still developing? Or are you having a focus on the local market there, which would be awesome?
So in the case of the chocolate, we were working with a chocolate fabric who's already exporting, who's selling chocolate at Bon Marché. You can buy it for €6 a tablet. But if you're in Madagascar, you can buy the local version for a quarter of that. Mm-hmm. And so they already have the market implemented, and we're taking care about to work with the students on projects with industries who are already functioning. You have not everybody was having the possibility of exporting things, but the sector was already there because we wanted to make them known that they already have right away after the diploma a job somewhere. Mm-hmm. And that the local industry can develop more. But the local industry was also already on international markets. In the Gaza version, we are focusing first of all on the local market, for example, because we won't have directly the cross-border politics open, so which is a longer term planning, but it's included in the strategy. So we have to work with something that can first of all function locally. Mm-hmm. In the first part, and then with the best timing, normally we have already the second part directly included. That's why it's UNIDO industrial development. So there's one part of the team working really on these issues, while we are working on the creative issues, but with always the feedbacks, how we can make it known and how we can make smart combinations of companies or something like that, through products or through some contracts that can be able to be more developed in the second term. Mm-hmm. Sis?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Any other questions?
So is this master's degree still going on?
Yes, it's still going on. And now we have, since some weeks, we created an association, because with the school where the master is implemented, it's a bit difficult. They're very slow with developments and stuff like that. And one of my students, Dominique, I'm working with him since the official program stopped. I never stopped. I'm always in contact with them. And we are trying to make some connections to French and Italian schools right now to make really local development happen. Because Dominique went up he's now included in the city political cultural, il a un poste maintenant dans la politique culturelle de la ville. Et donc, this make open doors, and it's a longer term development, which we are doing from a very unofficial part. It becomes now more official, as we are now an entity and juridical entity. We can go for fundings too.
What's the association?
Johari Constellation. Johari. I will keep, of course, Humanitarian Designers posted on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nice. Thank you very much.